The biggest storyline entering 2025 is the return of Ronald Acuña Jr. and Spencer Strider. But what else we'll be watching for this year? I'm going to give you my top 5 storylines. And Craig Kimbrel is back. We'll talk about all the bullpen moves happening on this episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at shorts.ball. Check out the podcast on X at LockedOn_Braves and on Instagram at Locked On Braves. Subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button and leave me a comment down below. If you listen on the audio version, you can help out by leaving me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And thank you so much for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. I keep saying it, and I'm going to say it until it happens. We are almost there. The start of the 2025 season is right around the corner, but a lot to get to before then. Today, we're going to be looking at my top 5 storylines. I'm also going to give some of your top storylines that you submitted. And we got a signing, Craig Kimbrel, coming back to the Atlanta Braves. We'll talk about that. Perdomo getting traded, a lot happening in the bullpen. We'll discuss all that on today's episode of a Locked On Braves. So can't wait to get into all of that action on today's podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in each and every day to Locked On Braves, where again, we'll be with you all season long. A lot of coverage coming your way. I'm surprised about the Craig Kimbrel signing. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. But that one caught me off guard. Was not looking at that coming into it, but it makes a lot of sense, I think. And we're definitely going to talk about it on today's podcast. So today's podcast is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code at LockedOnMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, well, let's jump right into it. I'm going to give you my top 5 takeaways or top 5 storylines for the upcoming 2025 season. And the first one is obvious. It was the first one that came to my mind, and a lot of your responses you sent in, you all had the same idea. It's the return of Ronald Acuña Jr. and Spencer Strider. How could it not be? I talked about them a lot on yesterday's podcast. Yes, it's only Tuesday. Feels like it's Friday already. So we've only had one podcast this week. I talked about it on yesterday's podcast. Just the excitement level. You saw it when Strider made his return. It's just a different level of excitement watching Ronald Acuña Jr. and Spencer Strider play, and that was taken away from us last year. So we're all wondering, what are they going to look like coming back? How quickly can they get healthy? Can they stay healthy? That's probably the biggest question, and one we can't answer. We did get a little bit of an answer from Spencer Strider, and what we saw on Monday, he gave us a glimpse of the Spencer Strider that we've come to know and love, and that he could be that. We still don't know about Acuña. Yes, everything looks good when we see him running on the field and taking batting practice, but we're not really going to know until we see him get into game action. And the obvious question that we all are wondering is if this is going to be another 2022 version of Ronald Acuña Jr. when he came back from the first knee injury. And look, he was okay. It was a 115 WRC plus. That's certainly a well above average player. 119 games. He slashed 266, 351, 413, only 15 home runs, 71 runs scored, 50 RBI in that season, 764 OPS, 2.4 FWAR, still stole a ton of bases. I put the wrong number down here, but that's the one thing that you wonder, though, with Ronald coming back. He's already hinted at the fact that he might not run quite as much. So what do we see? Because that made a big difference in that 2022 season. Like I said, he still scored 71 runs, but it's because he got on base 35% of the time and he stole 29 bases. Well, what if he only steals 20 bases? What if he only gets on base 33% of the time? I don't know that that's going to be the case, because he's still going to get his walks and get on. But if that's the version that we get of Ronald Acuña Jr., it's a fine player, but it's certainly not the impact that we've come to expect from him. And we just don't know. And again, what are the limitations with running and stealing bases? And, is the speed still there? I'd imagine it is, but does he just not run as often and take that part of his game away a little bit? Those are questions we just don't know and won't know. And that's why these are the biggest storylines for the season, because that's what we hope to find out as the season goes along. Look, 2022 and 2024 are the only years that Ronald Acuña Jr. had an ISO of 238 or below 238. And that's just not who he is. We know he has big power. Can he get back to that? Does he trust that knee enough to get the lift on the baseball to show off that big power? Something that really hurt him last year is that he pulled the ball 46% of the time, and he had a career high 51.1% ground ball rate. So he's pulling the ball on the ground. You don't mind the high pull rate if you're getting the ball in the air, because that's going to lead to home runs, going to lead to doubles, but he's pulling the ball and hitting it on the ground. In 2023, his pull rate was a career low 39.7%. And that's why I think he was able to bat a career high 337 that year, is just because he was lacing the ball all over the field. Last year in 2024, wasn't doing that, and he wasn't putting the ball in the air enough. Granted, slow start to the year, offense, dead baseballs in the first 2 months of the season. He didn't get to play when things warmed up and you saw the baseball start traveling a little bit better. Maybe things would have improved for him. I imagine things would have improved for him a little bit, but it was a rough 2024, no doubt about it. And now you just wonder, coming off a second knee surgery, what is he going to look like? And that's the question that a lot of us are asking. And then also with Strider, is he one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball again? Judging by one spring training outing, you're inclined to say yes, but that's still a lingering question that we really won't know until we see him go 5, 6, 7 innings and look like he did basically on Monday, or some version of that. Since entering the league in 2021, Spencer Strider leads all qualified pitchers with a K per 9 of 13.51. That's 1.5 points higher than the second best, which is Blake Snell at 11.9. That's how dominant Spencer Strider has been since entering the league. In Chris Sale's best season, and Chris Sale is one of the best strikeout pitchers of all time, in his best season, he had a K per 9 of 13.5. So let me just say that again, because there's still some people out there that don't think that Spencer Strider was one of the best pitchers in the game before getting injured. At least you can argue who's the best, whatever you want to. He was certainly the most dominant pitcher in the game. So let me throw this stat out there again. His career K per 9 is 13.51. Chris Sale's best single season K per 9 is 13.5. And that was with the Red Sox back in 2018. Last year, it was 11.4 K per 9 for Chris Sale. So that's how dominant Spencer Strider has been in his career. Can he be that again? Can he be some version of that again? I'd have no real questions, especially after what we saw on Monday, that he can still be a really good pitcher. Can he be that dominant level of pitcher again? I think is the other question that I have. And obviously getting built back up and be able to maintain that over 5, 6, 7 innings. So that is the key storyline for 2025. I had somebody ask, and I'm sorry, I didn't write the name down, but I asked all of you what your biggest storylines were. And somebody responded, Acuña and Strider, which I agree with, but they added because they think the season depends on them. I don't necessarily agree with that. Obviously, it changes things if Acuña is Acuña and Strider is Strider. If Acuña is Acuña and Strider is Strider, they are one of the best teams in baseball. I'd put them right there with the Dodgers. If we get a 2022 version of Acuña, we get a dialed back version of Strider, then that's a different ball game. Because when those two are playing at their peak, they're the best hitter in the game. They're the best pitcher in the game. And so in that regard, I understand what the listener was saying, but I still think even if they are a little bit lesser versions, even if Acuña is the 2022 version, even if Strider pulls his K per 9 down to 11 or 12, again, last year, Chris Sales was just over 11. He's still going to be a really good pitcher, and this is still going to be a really good team if everybody else does their job. I just think if Acuña is Acuña and Strider is Strider, it puts them right up there with the Dodgers, and they're going to be one of the best teams in baseball. But that is something that I think we'll all be monitoring throughout 2025. What do those two look like? Can they get back to that level of play? So that is my top storyline. Next, I'm going to get into my next 4 and also some of your storylines that you submitted. We'll get into all of that here next. When it comes to fueling your body, quality matters. That's why Just Ingredients is changing the game with clean, high-quality products designed to support better health and peak performance. Just Ingredients offers an NSF-certified line of protein powder, electrolytes, pre-workout, and creatine, all rigorously tested to ensure they're free from substances banned by major athletic organizations. Just Ingredients has partnered with two-time MVP Bryce Harper, who trusts their NSF-certified sports line to fuel his training and recovery. Whether you're recovering after a workout or need an energy boost, they're grass-fed, whey protein, and pre-workout to deliver real results. I haven't got a chance to try it yet because my wife jumped on these right when they came in the mail, but she loves them. She enjoys them. And look at me. I don't need the help. I'm already built up as it is, but make sure you visit justingredients.us and use code LOCKEDONMLB for 20% off and for more wellness. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Thank you as always, making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Thanks for everybody joining me live. We had over 100 live in here last night. We're approaching that number here again tonight. Thank you for your support. I know you're all getting excited for the season, so make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Braves. Make sure you check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day. Well, let's jump back into the storylines. My number 2 storyline is, does the offense bounce back? Look, we can easily blame last year's lack of offense on all the injuries, and justifiably so. But even for when those guys were healthy last year, they were rather disappointing. Look, we knew there had to be some regression from 2023. As much as I complain about the dead baseballs in 2024, I think it's pretty obvious that baseballs were flying a little bit higher in 2023, because it wasn't just the Braves who had huge numbers in 2023. A lot of other teams had huge numbers in 2023 and saw that drop off in 2024. So you knew there would be some regression, but again, not quite to the degree that we saw. Jorge Soler and Ramon Laureano had the second and third highest OPS on the team last year, behind Marcell Ozuna. Granted, much smaller sample sizes, but I don't think many of you would have guessed that. You had Acuña, Albies, Michael Harris, all had an OPS under 725 last year. Kelnick, Murphy, and Arcia were all under a 680 OPS last year. Even when these guys were healthy, they did not play well. And while the seasons for Riley and Olsen were okay, it didn't make up for the lack of production from everybody else in the lineup. And so you got to be able to bounce back. And we never know what type of offensive environment we're going to get from season to season. It just seems to change, and we don't know anything until we get into actual gameplay. And then the final thing for this, what impact, if any, does Tim Hires have on the style of offense that the Braves have this year? Do we see more battles at the plate? If you watch that first game in the Tokyo series, and you face the Dodgers enough, they battle every at bat. It's a 3-2 count. They're fouling off pitches. They're waiting for you to make a mistake. The plan for the Braves for years now has been, go up there, hunt your pitch, and swing as hard as you can. And look, it's worked until it didn't. But do we see a change in approach from the Braves offense this year to a more thought out game plan, battle kind of tactic up there with 2 strikes? Do we see any type of change in the offensive philosophy for the Braves? So that's my second biggest storyline. My third one is, what becomes of this bullpen? And we'll talk more about that in the final segment as a new name has entered the chat. It's the biggest concern going into the year, is the bullpen for the Atlanta Braves. Bullpens will evolve over a season, and you can fix bullpens a lot easier during a season, but certainly it is a question mark going in. I think some of the things that I'll be watching, can Hector Neris rebound to be a solid setup guy that he was for a long time, or did Father Time finally catch up with him? But I think I'm most interested in seeing, who steps up of the young guys. Does Daysbull become that shutdown setup guy that that he's shown in the past and that we all believe he can be. Did the Braves find something with Daniel De Los Santos? Is what we've seen in spring training legit? The stuff looks legit. So did the Braves find something there? Do any prospects break through, whether it be Domingo Gonzalez, a Hayden Harris, a Roldy Munoz, an Ellison Joseph, a Royber Salinas, perhaps a Hurston Waldrop or a Giancarlos Lara later in the year? Do any of these prospects step up in the bullpen? I think it's going to be very interesting to watch. And of course, now we have a new name added to that in Craig Kimbrel. Then can he get back to being a solid reliever for the Braves this year? My fourth storyline, really my fourth and my fifth, both have to do with prospects. The fourth one is this the year for AJ Smith-Shawver? Seems crazy. He's just going into his age 22 season, but it feels like he's been around forever, and we're still kind of waiting for him to break through. And that's unfair because he was pushed up earlier than he should have been. But it does kind of feel like the year. He moved into my top prospect overall when I did my prospect rankings. The hype has only gone up in spring training with the stuff that we've seen from him. I still think the concerns are there. Can he hold up that velocity deep into a start? Can he command his pitches enough in the zone to get outs and to get chases out of the zone? Those are still questions I have, but there is no questioning the stuff. He has the stuff and the ability to get hitters out at the major league level. Is this the year? Do we see him earn a spot? And do we see him get a long run to try to keep that spot like we saw with Schwellenbach last year? Look, Schwellenbach had a rough go to begin last year, but the Braves saw something with him. They stuck with it. He ultimately figured it out and got better and better. Do they give AJ Smith-Shawver that type of leash this year? And does he take advantage of it? Is something I'm watching for. And then finally, does Drake Baldwin force the Braves to move on from either Sean Murphy or Marcell Ozuna? This storyline for me isn't so much about Drake Baldwin and what he looks like this year, but what is the plan going forward? If Drake Baldwin comes out and he continues to have obviously he's going to get at least a 2-3 week run at the big league level. What does that look like? But even after that, no matter what he does there, if he goes back to AAA and he has an 850 OPS, we've heard all the good things about him behind the plate. He continues to make strides there. What does that do to the Braves in the offseason? Do they consider trying to move Murphy? Do they consider going a split with Murphy and Baldwin? Or does it hold them back from pursuing re-signing Ozuna? I'm very interested to see how that works out in the offseason, depending on what Drake Baldwin does this year and how that maybe changes the Braves' plans going forward to make Drake Baldwin a bigger part of their offense in the future. If that makes them, like I said, move on from Murphy, which I don't see. I think it would be option number 2. I think it would be a situation where, or maybe a combination of option 2 and option 3, where you see Sean Murphy get the majority of the starts at catcher going forward. You don't re-sign Ozuna, and you have Drake Baldwin split time at catcher with Sean Murphy and DH. I think is the most likely outcome going forward. But Ozuna's been your best hitter for 2 years. If he does it again this year, there's got to be interest in bringing him back. But I'm very interested to see how the Drake Baldwin dynamic plays out this year and how that really plays out into the offseason. All right, next, I'll get into some of your comments and talk about the Craig Kimbrel signing. We'll do that here next. All right. Thank you all for joining me here on this podcast. Sorry for the scratchy voice and the coughing that I have going on tonight. I have to do an interview on XN Radio right after this as well. So hopefully voice holds up for that. But I wanted to get into some of your comments because I asked you what your biggest storylines were for the season. And the one that you thought I would probably get was from AJ Evans, and there was others out there. Will Orlando Arcia hold off Nick Allen? I guess that's a storyline going into the year. We'll have to see how things play out there. Again, as I've said, I think it's going to be at least 2 months where it is Arcia's job. But if he continues to be one of the worst hitters, you got to give Nick Allen a chance. Ian Anderson being in the starting rotation, I think that could be resolved rather quickly. If Ian Anderson comes out, continues to walk batters, we could have that storyline completed within a month. Is the way I could see that playing out. Mary J. Acuña coming back. Emmanuel, how long of a lease does Arcia have? Chris Mofield, approach of the plate hasn't changed. Aegon, the bullpen's been a strength for multiple years, but now it's a wild card. Jeff Gannett says Sean Murphy, bullpen depth in the growth of AJ Smith-Shawver. PJ's Braves, will Snit be able to make the calls that need to be made if players don't perform? Look, I'm never one that's really ragged on Brian Snitker and his managing ability. I do think last year he was very slow to make changes when it was clear changes needed to be made. What happens this year in those situations? Is he quicker to pull the trigger? I'm interested to see that as well. Eddie Minton says the pitching, both starters and pen. Isaac Rayfield, the progression of Schwellenbach and AJ Smith-Shawver. And then finally, Parlay says Drake's progression, health, same old Arcia, bullpen, good or bad. Are Schwelly and AJ them dudes? I think Schwelly is for sure. I think AJ can be, but that is certainly one of my storylines this year as well. What does AJ Smith-Shawver look like? All right, let's get into the news of the day and wrap things up here before I just completely fall apart and crash out. The Braves traded Angel Perdomo late Monday night to the Angels for a player to be named later or cash. This caught a lot of us off guard, caught me off guard. Many of you thought, okay, what are the Braves building up to? Are they building up to something big? And we got the answer to that in that they signed Craig Kimbrel. But let me touch on Perdomo for just a minute before I get to Kimbrel. The Perdomo signing's become a disappointment. The Braves signed him, I think, with the idea of knowing that they might need a lefty this year, that they might lose AJ Minter in free agency, and you don't even give him a chance. Now, look, I have said it throughout spring training. He has not been as impressive as I hoped, and I didn't have him on my opening day roster, but I thought they would at least give him a rehab assignment and see if he can put it together, but they pulled the plug pretty quick on Perdomo. But the Braves do use that money that they free up trading him to the Angels, and they go out and get Craig Kimbrel. On a minor league deal, he'll make $2 million if he's on the big league roster. This is the thing with Craig Kimbrel. There have been times over the past few years where he's still been a dominant pitcher. But when he is bad, he has been really, really bad. And it's just, I don't know what to expect from him at this point. And look, it's a minor league deal. It's similar to Hector Neris. You know, sign a guy who's been one of the better relievers in baseball for a while and just see what you can get out of him. It's still big strikeout stuff. He had 73 strikeouts and 52 in the third innings last year, but 2 of the last 3 years, he's had a whip over 1.3. Last year, the ERA was 5.33. It's just you don't know what to expect. A 13.4 walk per 9 last year, but it was a 31.5 K percentage. So still a guy who gets a ton of strikeouts. I just wouldn't get my hopes up. I know it's a reunion, 36-year-old coming back to the Braves. I would love to see him come back and be that guy. I'm just not very hopeful for it. But again, it's a low-cost signing. If he makes the big league roster, it'll be a prorated $2 million. It's just nothing really wrong with this. This is a lose-lose situation. And Sean, I have a Halls in. I'm trying as best I can to hold on here. It's a lose. It's not a, it's a minor league deal. There's really nothing wrong with this move. You take a shot. Now, here's where I'll push back. Why couldn't you just go, and it probably would have cost a little bit more, I'm assuming, but maybe not because nobody else is going after David Robertson. But could you not take that $2 million and maybe $2 million more and go get David Robertson, a guy that I do have more confidence in? That I would have been okay with. But instead, they go out and get Craig Kimbrel, hoping that he can turn back the clock, hoping that he can be that guy again. It's just, it's been really bad for Craig Kimbrel at times over the last couple of years. And I don't know how much trust you can put in him. Again, the strikeout stuff is there. 2021, he had 100 strikeouts in 59 and 2/3 innings, a 0.91 whip. He was really good. And then in 2022, a 3.75 ERA, 72 strikeouts in 60 innings, but it was a 1.32 whip. In 2023, it was good again, 69 innings, 94 strikeouts, at 1.04 whip that year, had 23 saves. He had 23 saves last year as well. So again, there were times where he could be really good, but it's just when it was bad, it was really, really bad. And a lot of walks. And I remember that back with the Braves too, and I'm sure you all do as well. Craig Kimbrel could come in, he'd load the bases, and then he'd strike out the next 3. And it was always kind of a wild ride for Craig Kimbrel, who I think is a Hall of Famer. He's 60 saves away from 500. I don't think he's going to get there, but I think he's a Hall of Famer someday. But I don't think we're going to get a Hall of Fame season from Craig Kimbrel, but they don't need to. The other thing with Craig Kimbrel is that he's never done well in a setup role. And you got to imagine that's what he's going to be in if he does make the Braves roster. It's going to be some sort of setup role, and that's not been a position that he's thrived in under. So again, it's not a bad signing. I don't mind taking the chance, but at the same time, could you have given $2 million more and went out and got David Robertson, a guy that I do trust that has been good over the last several years? I think the Braves certainly could have done that and maybe tried to do that. Jay Bryant says Kimbrel is just 14 saves away from having 200 with the Braves. That would be cool. I just don't know that he's going to get that many opportunities for the Braves unless injuries happen, and let's hope nothing happens to Iggy. But I don't think he's going to get too many opportunities to save games this year. But the strikeout stuff is there. That has not gone away. He still gets a ton of swing and miss. That's part of his game. It's just, can he throw enough strikes? Can he keep it in the ballpark? He gave up 7 home runs last year, 10 home runs the year before that. But he is back. I love Craig Kimbrel. Again, I'm glad to see him back in Atlanta. I wish it would have been 5 or 6 years ago that they would have got him back. But here he is now, hoping for the best, hope that he can put things together and have a solid year for the Braves, maybe end his career here in Atlanta. All right, that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Thanks so much for joining me. Thanks so much for battling through this episode with me. I know it was rough with the coughs. I apologize for that, but hopefully we're getting a little bit better, getting through the allergy, pollen season, cold, whatever this is that's happening. Thank you so much for riding this one out with me. Clay, Lauro Bond, Sean Finley, Isaac Bowman. Thank you so much. Protect PR, Jay Bryant. Thanks for joining us. Jeff Humphreys in here as always, everydayer, SoCal Brave in here. I appreciate you joining. PJ's Braves. Kelnick going to platoon with De La Cruz. I think so. I haven't seen enough against, a small sample size. I haven't seen enough from Jared Kelnick against a few lefties he's faced this spring to show that he deserves everyday at bats. I think De La Cruz has been good enough to deserve that platoon spot. So I think it will be a platoon to begin the season. All right, that will do it with this episode. Again, subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. One more time, I do apologize for the coughs on the show. Joe Me in here and every day. I haven't seen you in a little bit, Joe, but I know you've been watching. Duval, T87, Matt Mock. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. We'll be back again tomorrow with more, and we'll have some spring training action again tomorrow, so looking forward to that. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.